Welcome to This Explainer. If you're navigating those final years of high school in Rhode Island, whether you're a student, a parent, or an educator, you absolutely know this period is just full of major transitions. So today, we're going to look really closely at the actual legal framework governing those final years. We're stepping right past the hallway rumors, and we're going to examine the hard facts about compulsory school attendance laws and age requirements right here in the Ocean State. Let's get into it. So, when can a student actually legally finish school? It's a question that comes up all the time. And honestly, it makes sense, right? Think about it. When you hit 16, this whole new world of adult responsibilities suddenly just opens up. You get your driver's license, you can snag a part-time job, start bringing in your own paycheck. And because of these huge, exciting milestones, it's incredibly common for families to just assume that 16 is also the magic number for making your own decisions about high school. I mean, it's kind of funny to think you can legally drive a multi-ton car down the highway, but you can't just excuse yourself from math class. But let's contrast those personal milestones with the actual legal reality of school attendance in Rhode Island. Because that actual magic number is 18. That is the hard, fast rule you really need to know. Back in 2011, the Rhode Island General Assembly revised the state law, and they made it crystal clear. The absolute standard endpoint for compulsory attendance in Rhode Island is 18 years old. It's not 16, it's not 17, it is absolutely 18. Okay, let's look at our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to cover the age 18 rule, can you leave at 16, alternative learning plans, homeschooling and other options, why Rhode Island cares, and finally, what families must do. Starting off with Section 1, the age 18 rule. Now, compulsory attendance. That sounds like some pretty heavy bureaucratic jargon, doesn't it? But let's translate this into plain English. It is simply the legal requirement that teens attend school for a set period of time. The absolute key phrase here is continuously enrolled. Now wait, this doesn't necessarily mean sitting at the exact same desk in the exact same traditional brick-and-mortar building for every single student. What it actually means is that the state expects ongoing, unbroken participation in an educational program that they have officially approved. And according to the Rhode Island Department of Education, or RIDE, this is the default expectation. This is the baseline statewide rule, guys. Unless a very specific legal exception applies to your unique situation, a student simply cannot just stop going to school. You are expected to be fully engaged in your education right up until that 18th birthday. Which brings us to Section 2. Can you leave at 16? For parents and caregivers listening, here is your most important practical takeaway. Rhode Island is simply not a state where a 16-year-old can generally just decide to drop out and be done with their compulsory attendance. A 16 or 17-year-old might be taking on some very adult responsibilities, like we just talked about, working, driving, but they are absolutely, unequivocally still subject to compulsory school attendance. Assuming the obligation just naturally ends because they're getting close to adulthood is a major legal misconception. And this perfectly highlights a core confusion: attendance law versus graduation law. Look, being old enough to start thinking about adult credentials, like joining a training program or looking toward graduation, that doesn't just erase the legal requirement to be enrolled. It's like this. Graduation laws govern what you need to achieve to get your diploma. Attendance laws govern where you physically need to be while you're of school age. That attendance requirement still applies heavily, even if you feel totally ready for your next steps, unless, of course, you qualify for a lawful alternative. Let's explore those alternatives in Section 3, alternative learning plans. Now, what's really interesting here are the exact parameters of an alternative learning plan, or an ALP. Rhode Island does actually allow a superintendent or head of school to waive that standard attendance requirement, but check out these requirements. First, you got to be at least 16. Second, the plan must actively support your progress toward a Rhode Island diploma or its equivalent. And third, and this is the big one, approval is a formal process. It is never, ever automatic. You can't just declare you're on an alternative plan. The school leadership literally has to sign off on it. If a student between 16 and 18 is looking to withdraw for an approved reason, it is far from a casual decision. It requires explicit parental permission and strict adherence to school procedures. The state's materials point out that these ALP and formal withdrawal processes exist specifically to keep students engaged in learning while reducing the risk of them dropping out entirely. And, crucially, following the rules prevents students and families from ending up in truancy proceedings, which nobody wants. Moving right along to Section 4, homeschooling and other options. So, Rhode Island law completely recognizes home instruction, absolutely, but it is highly regulated. A parent cannot simply wake up one morning and decide to stop their kids' school attendance to teach them at home. The state's guidance mandates that you must have formal permission from the local school committee to instruct a student at home. It is a wonderful legal option for sure, but it absolutely requires checking the right boxes first. Now, what about older students who want to get their GED or high school equivalency credential? Rhode Island definitely offers adult education and high school equivalency programs. However, Rhode notes that these programs are carefully designed to fit right back into the state's attendance framework. Basically, enrolling in a GED pathway is meant to keep the student actively enrolled and engaged in learning until they turn 18. It's a different vehicle, yeah, but it's driving toward the exact same destination of continuous education. Which leads us to Section 5, Why Rhode Island Cares. You see, the state isn't just making these rules up to be difficult. Rhode Island places a massive emphasis on attendance through their Attendance Matters RI campaign. They track the data closely, and it consistently shows that chronic absence severely impacts reading levels, graduation rates, and long-term opportunities for youth. Getting teens in seats, wherever those educational seats may happen to be, is a massive statewide priority for student success. It's not just a minor annoyance for local school administrators. The compulsory attendance law really isn't about punishment. It's designed as a safety net. The ultimate goal here is to keep students connected to learning long enough to actually earn a diploma, build real-world skills, and move into college, technical training, or the workforce with some really solid preparation. The state genuinely wants to set you up to succeed in adult life, and they firmly believe that staying engaged in education until 18 is the absolute best way to make that happen. Finally, let's wrap up with Section 6, What Families Must Do. Okay, let's build a highly practical action checklist for your family. If you're ever unsure about your legal standing, first, confirm the student's exact age and grade level. Second, check with the school about your continuous enrollment status. Third, if a traditional setting just isn't working for you, initiate a conversation with a counselor or principal to ask about an alternative learning plan. And finally, always keep written records of your school communications and approvals just to protect yourself. Honestly, a quick conversation with your district office can prevent some huge legal misunderstandings down the road. So the absolutely crucial point to remember here is that every exception to the age 18 rule must be treated as a formal decision, not an informal one. Confirming your pathways before any action is taken ensures that every student's path is intentionally planned for success. I'll leave you with this final thought. If the state is this invested in keeping students connected to their future until they are 18, shouldn't we as a community be just as intentional about designing educational paths that actually make them want to stay?